Welcome to Radio 64. Welcome to Radio 64 Video Game Music Remix Radio. I'm your host, Eric Mickles, also known online as duskvstweak. Radio 64 is part of the Radio Meanwhile network. Visit radiomeanwhile.com for more information about this and other great podcasts. Share your thoughts on this episode and request music by following the show on Facebook or Twitter at Radio64Pod. And please rate, subscribe, and share this show on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. We opened the show with Caravan Bowser by Flexstyle and XPRTNovice from OC Remix from the game Super Mario 3D World. That track specifically came from the album Super Cartography Brothers, which is an electronic dance music tribute to a whole bunch of different tracks from the Mario franchise. I think this track is so unique because it has that electronic dance music feel. It definitely has that. But with that jazzy saxophone in there, so it's the type of big band swing dance kind of tune that I used to hear as a teenager when I used to go swing dancing. Because what cool teenager isn't going swing dancing, you know? But anyways, I haven't played the one that this is from, the Super Mario 3D World, but it absolutely has that Mario energy. And I just love that saxophone so much in there. It's just such a fun piece that's retro and modern, and it combines all of that in this really dancey, groovy way. The saxophone is doing these like 2-second pieces that are then being echoed by the rest of the music, but then there's also that sweet saxophone solo. I've said it before on the show, put more saxophone into these video game remixes, put more saxophone into everything. Bruce Springsteen cannot carry the saxophone love alone, so, you know, get it in there, people. Anyway, again, that was Caravan Bowser by Flexstyle, XPRTNovice, from OC Remix's album, Super Cartography Brothers, from the game Super Mario 3D World. The list of games that I have cried at it's a short list, and I don't mean that to be proud. It's something that started happening as I got older. I started getting a bit more teary-eyed. You know, as a teenager growing up, I would be moved by video games, but it was as I got older, the waterworks started to show up. But it's still kind of a short list. So Walking Dead Season 1 made me cry. Recently, the game Florence, which was a 30-minute long mobile game that I think you can now play on basically everything, got me teary-eyed. And the one that really busted out the waterworks, To the Moon. It's this game with these old school Super Nintendo style graphics to make it look a bit like the old Final Fantasy games or Secret of Mana or whatnot. Much more of a visual novel, but the story it's telling in there just tugs at the heartstrings about this old man who's dying, and there's this group that goes around and they can create fake memories for you, and he wants to have the memory that he went to the moon. And in order to do that, they have to kind of change his memories. And I won't spoil it, but at the end, it as soon as it ruined me. To the Moon, yes, it's a crying game. It's pretty quick. I think it's only like 4 hours at the most. Definitely check it out if you haven't. This track we're about to play is remixing the track Everything's Alright from the game To the Moon. It's a sad little song, but what I love here is that Dale North comes in with these lyrics. It kind of takes that piano theme from To the Moon, and it reminds me of the trend you heard with end credits in the 90s. These very sappy, slightly cheesy love songs to the movies at that time. Because the strength of Everything's Alright is so strong, and because Dale North is singing so earnestly, I think the cheesiness is there, but I think it's also a really heartfelt piece of music here. So this is Everything's Alright Short Steps Mix by Dale North from ocremix.org from the game To the Moon.
Short steps, deep breath, everything is alright. Chin up, I can't step into the spotlight. She said, I'm sad, somehow without any words. I just stood there, searching for an answer. When this world is over, lose their meaning, yeah. When I feel, when I say, there's such a rift between them. He said, I can't really seem to read you. I just stood there, never know what I should do. When this world is over, the moon is all we'll see. I'll ask you to fly away with me, yeah. Now
That was Everything's Alright, Short Steps Mix by Dale North from ocremix.org from the game To the Moon. So yeah, even listening to that, it still kind of puts me back there, and I'm just kind of wrecked again. Every time I think back to the moon, it just makes me even more sad. The heartstrings. It's almost Pixar level. Goodness, if you think Up makes you cry, play To the Moon. Well, you know what? To combat all those feelings that are coming rushing in, I've got a very heavy metal rock pick here. This comes from the game Doom Troopers, which I always thought, seeing the title, obviously I thought it was somehow related to the Doom games. I just didn't know how. It's not. Doom Troopers Mutant Chronicles was on the Sega Genesis, and it was a platform shooter, so I guess it has more in common with the Contra games. This track has a little bit of synth, but it really is about that aggressive electric guitar that's playing throughout here. The electric and those heavy drums just tearing it up. And it absolutely belongs in a platformer shooter. Or, again, just listening to this track, I'm like, oh, this has to be from Doom because it has that adrenaline pumping metal guitar. But no, it comes from something else that is not Doom, but I'm certain they called it Doom Troopers, trying to ride that wave. So this track is called Fire Move by Eightman from ocremix.org from the game Doom Troopers Mutant Chronicles. That was Fire Move by Eightman from ocremix.org from the game Doom Troopers Mutant Chronicles. You can just feel the muscles rippling through that song. And that outro, goodness, I love it. The whole track, it's only about 2.5 minutes, and I don't think it could be any longer. It rocks too hard. It would wreck the listener if it was any longer than that. Mazedude, who is an artist we featured on this show a couple of times, to say the least, has this really fantastic, dark, crunchy sound to a lot of his tracks. He has released an album to a game that's forthcoming called Mazequest 3. Now, there are 2 albums out there for this. There's the Mazequest 3 original soundtrack, which is the game version, which is the soundtrack for the game. You'll be able to find that version on Apple Music and Spotify, most places where you can find video game music. But he also released a composer's cut, per his own words on the Bandcamp site. It says, the release showcases the composer's cut of the music. The in-game renditions are simplified a bit, with various elements toned down so as not to distract the gameplay. So, technically, that means the composer's cut you could think of it as a remix, which is what we play on this show. So we are definitely playing a track from that. It's called The Main Title. This track and all the tracks in the album, Mazequest 3 by Mazedude, you can find those on mazedude.bandcamp.com. But yes, this track, the main title for Mazequest 3, has that heavy kicking intro with that whip, and it's this really strange, fun, crunchy Western sound. It kind of has that NES vibe. It has a very strong chiptune sounds throughout. Mazedude mentions that he's been playing around with 9-bit elements in there as well, which is a sound I love. But I think that main riff that's playing in here, that main plucking riff, is just so catchy and just so cool and sets that Western vibe so well. I think it's a fantastic piece of video game music. Again, definitely go check out Mazequest 3 original soundtrack, the composer's cut, or the game version music at mazedude.bandcamp.com. This is Main Title by Mazedude from the game Mazequest 3, the original soundtrack. Composer's cut. That was The Main Title by Mazedude from Mazequest 3, the original soundtrack, the composer's cut from mazedude.bandcamp.com. Also, if you've been digging the Mazedude music that we played past episodes or the one we just listened to, Mazedude has launched a new website for a new project that he's doing. It's not a video game one. You can find it at wordsandversesproject.com, and I was checking it out. It looks real interesting. It's coming to Kickstarter in 2020. So keep your eye out. Definitely go check that out as well. We've got an old one, but a good one. This comes from Final Fantasy V, and it's remixing the Pirates Ahoy theme by Nobuo Uematsu. I think, for me, I like the first half of this track much more than the second half of the track, and that's because I love the Pirates theme from Final Fantasy V. I think that's probably one of the best pieces of music from that game. It's just so fun, and it's so catchy, and it feels so Final Fantasy in its quirkiness. But yes, the first half you hear the Pirates Ahoy theme, and then it becomes the cursed place from Final Fantasy V. And Protricity is really creating this atmospheric, windy, dark sound throughout, even with the kind of boppy Pirates theme from the game. There's just a lot of really interesting textures in this track. The combination of the synth with the woodwinds is very cool. And while I prefer just the Pirates theme that we're hearing in the first half, the transitional phase where it's switching over it's spooky, it's windy and it's stormy, and you can hear how the two tracks really mix. Like the pirates in the first half have ventured into a storm. They're trapped. They need to get out. It's just the Cursed Palace is just not as a fun tune as Pirates Ahoy. But this is called Cursed Pirates of the Sea by Protricity from ocremix.org from the game Final Fantasy V. that was Cursed Pirates of the Sea by Protricity from ocremix.org from the game Final Fantasy V. You know, I'm not sure, but I think that's the first Final Fantasy V track we featured. We usually are required by the law of this podcast to feature a Final Fantasy track every episode, but I think this is the first time we did Final Fantasy V, which was not my favorite Final Fantasy. I like the job system, like everybody else, I like the job system, but the story just felt very dry and bored me to tears. It was a real slog for me to get through that game. Even with that job system, I was just not being compelled by those characters. It's a strange game set between Final Fantasy IV and Final Fantasy VI because both of those have such memorable characters, but I don't think I could tell you the name of the main character. I don't think I could tell you the name of any of the characters from Final Fantasy V. I'm sorry, I didn't mean for that to be a dig at Final Fantasy V. I know many people love that game. I just wish I could have been one of them. Alright, I never played this NES game back in 1992, but I'm pretty sure the Cheetahmen games have a kind of reputation of really good music attached to strange games, and this track is a real grungy, funky synth piece. A little bit darker, a little bit more aggressive. So I've got no stories to talk about with Cheetahmen or Cheetahmen 2, but I do like this track. So we've got this track. This is called Cheetah by PrototypeRaptor from ocremix.org from the game Cheetahmen 2. That was Cheetah by PrototypeRaptor from ocremix.org from the game Cheetahmen 2. Yeah, so Cheetah is spelt like an acronym, and I don't know what cheetah as an acronym would mean, but it makes me real nostalgic for SWAT Cats, and SWAT Cats wasn't an acronym. I don't know what it is. Part of me wants to go back and we get a new season of SWAT Cats, and Cheetah, the acronym, is an organization that they have to stop. You know that show was canceled because Ted Turner didn't like having such a violent show happening? I loved SWAT Cats. You know, and why haven't we brought SWAT Cats back? Everybody's always like Transformers, He-Man. SWAT Cats blows those shows away. More SWAT Cats. And did we ever get a SWAT Cats video game? Hold on, I'm gonna check this out right now. Oh my gosh, we did get a SWAT Cats game in 1995. SWAT Cats, The Radical Squadron. What was its reception? Next Generation reviewed it. SWAT Cats, The Radical Squadron got 2 stars out of 5. Oh man, well that's too bad. But at least SWAT Cats was given its due on the Super Nintendo. Bring SWAT Cats back. What song did we even play to get on this? A Cheetahmen 2 game? Forget it. Up next is a lovely piano piece from the game Chrono Trigger. It's the track Peaceful Days, and Chrono Trigger has such a wonderful soundtrack. It can evoke such emotion and such sense of place, which is important because you're traveling through time. So without that sense of place, I think you kind of be a bit lost. But the Peaceful Days track is so homey and so warm. The solo piano take arranges it, and it's just become such easy listening. It's really a wonderful take on that. Almost Miyazaki-like in its composition. So this is called Town Life in Piano by kLuTz from ocremix.org from the game Chrono Trigger. That was Town Life in Piano by kLuTz from ocremix.org from the game Chrono Trigger. Great. I had started Chrono Trigger a couple of times without ever finishing it, and I was always in love with the music from the very beginning. And then when I finally sat down and just played through the whole game, I was like, wow, there are tracks that I had never heard and it was just so good. All-time great soundtracks, Chrono Trigger. There's not a track in that game that sounds half-baked. Everything is just so well composed. This is one of my old school favorites, maybe one of the first tracks I ever listened to on OC Remix. It comes from Super Metroid. It's a synthy dance piece that it's one of those tracks that I just put on whenever I'm doing something relaxing. This is a track that I put on when I'm reading. This is a track that I put on falling asleep. This is a track that I put on playing a relaxing game like Civilization. This track is just one of those chill out mixes, and it's been one of my go-tos for I just need 5 minutes to unwind, meditate, and relax. And even though this is a dance mix, it really does become wonderful background music for whatever you're doing. This is called Mega Dance Mix 2002 from MIDIman from ocremix.org from the game Super Metroid. That was Mega Dance Mix 2002 by MIDIman from ocremix.org from the game Super Metroid. I've been listening to this track for so long. I mean it. This was one of the absolutely first tracks I ever listened to, and which means back in like 2002 or 2003 was when I first started listening to this. It almost, now when I listen to it, I get nostalgic for the past where I was listening to this music. It's no longer a track that I'm like, oh, I remember Super Metroid. It's such a good game. I listen to it now. I'm like, oh, I remember being in college and having to study. Oh, I remember being on the train and listening to this to calm down. It's, personally, it's a favorite of mine. It has this old school techno-y vibe that I really love hearing today. All right, you know what? I've said it on this podcast a couple times. I haven't played the Mega Man X games, and I will get to it, and eventually I'll play Mega Man X and I can talk about it. I finally turned on my Super NES Mini, and I played Mega Man X, and I gotta tell you, I get it. At first, I didn't get it. That first level I thought was very unimpressive, but as soon as you start fighting the robot masters in Mega Man X, the game just opens up. It is such a strong take on the Mega Man structure. It holds up to this day. Like, I'm playing it now, and I don't really feel like, oh, I get it. It's older. It was good then, but it's older. It's missing a lot of key features. I think the game is tons of fun now. I really enjoyed playing it, and had I ever gotten past that opening level as a kid, I think I would have really loved it. It has great music, great style. The levels are really cool. Mega Man X, I loved it. It's a great game. I'm glad it was on that Super Nintendo Mini, giving me the chance to finally play it. The track I'm playing is from Mega Man X3, which I haven't played, and I'll get to eventually. It's not too different from that Super Metroid track we played. It's a very electronic synth piece that might have a dance quality to it, but unlike that one, which was supposed to be a dance mix, this track we're about to listen to is much more aggressive, much more adrenaline pumping, something that you'd expect from Mega Man X, more so than the very atmospheric levels of Super Metroid. This one, it's all about that adrenaline. This track is going 90 miles an hour. This is Revolutions by Beatdrop from ocremix.org from the game Mega Man X3. That was Revolutions by Beatdrop from ocremix.org from the game Mega Man X3, the opening stage track of Mega Man X3. And liking that track right there that we listened to has me looking forward to getting to it. I mean, I got to get through Mega Man X2 first, but I was still able to play. I was worried that Mega Man X would be a bit too hard for me, but no, I've got it. I've got the skills to pay whatever bills Mega Man owes right now. I think I wish there was a little bit more of that electric guitar in that track, but you know what? It's a great one. We've got something a bit more somber coming from the Bloodborne games. I will get to the Dark Souls and the Demon Souls and the Bloodbornes eventually, unless I don't. But I really like this orchestral remix we're playing right here, this orchestral piece that feels like there's a symphony involved. It reminds me of that kind of gothic sound that you hear in the Castlevania games, especially the ones taking place after Symphony of the Night. What I really like about this is it starts out very quiet, and you think it's going to be of a somber, emotionally fueled piano track, and then it starts building, and the strings come in, and it starts building, and it becomes, you have a vocal choir coming in, and it starts becoming a lot more cinematic, it becomes bigger. You know, in that gothic sense, it becomes more fit for a cathedral than that beginning might have you believe. So, this is Undone by the Blood by RoeTaKa from ocremix.org from the game Bloodborne. that was Undone by the Blood by RoeTaKa from OC Remix from the game Bloodborne. Yeah, just a really cool orchestral piece there, bringing in those Castlevania vibes to what I believe is a lot of people's favorite of that series, right? Bloodborne, that's a lot of people, I think, consider Bloodborne to be almost the pinnacle of that kind of Demon Souls, Dark Souls world. Whereas I have only played Neo, which I wanted to play because it's a samurai take on that world. So Neo and Hollow Knight. And Hollow Knight beat the living crap out of me, so I don't know what will happen when I finally get to the Dark Souls Bloodborne series. That was the last track of the show. So thank you for listening to Radio64 Video Game Music Remix Radio. I have been your host, Eric Mickles, also known online as duskvstweak. Radio64 is part of the Radio Meanwhile network. Visit radiomeanwhile.com for more information about this and other great podcasts. Share your thoughts on this episode and request music by following the show on Facebook or Twitter at Radio64Pod. And please rate, subscribe, and share the show on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, or YouTube with the videos, wherever you get your podcasts. See you next episode.